Grizzlies fans, it is the second half of a back-to-back today. The Grizzlies are taking on a rival, the Golden State Warriors. Today, joining me to break this one down is Dieter Kurtenbach. And I am excited for today because the Grizzlies played this team January 15th, so not too long ago. And a little birdie told me that this team is coming wanting some revenge on this Grizzlies team. So let's break it down. The Grizzlies, Dieter, are thin. They're thin in the roster right now. Yesterday there was 12 guys who were listed on the injury report. Not guys 12 like 12 guys out. There's 12 guys listed on the injury report. They've called up two guys, signed 10 days, two guys that are just coming in, no practice. Trey played amazing last night, had his first NBA bucket. The Grizzlies are coming off a loss though. The Warriors coming off of a win over the Sixers.
Yep.
And Steph is playing incredible. Jonathan Kuminga is playing incredible. What has been the positive of the Warriors? Because last time we played this team, it was looking a little bleak.
Yeah, and I would argue that on the macro level, it's still pretty bleak for the Warriors. They're 4 games under 500. They're nowhere near the play-in tournament right now, and they only have themselves to blame for that. I guess they could probably levy some of that blame on Draymond Green, who, since he's come back from his suspension, has been marvelous and kind of shown everyone exactly why it is the Warriors have continuously bet on him throughout the years, not just the titles, but even now with his new contract this past offseason, why they're all in on Draymond Green. He's unlocked a lot of things for the Warriors. If nothing else, he's taking the ball out of Steph Curry's hands as the point guard and delivering the ball to Steph Curry, who's wide open on the wing now. And it really does make a world of difference for the Warriors having Draymond on offense. Makes a world of difference for the Warriors having Draymond Green on defense, but you could have told me that. And I think it's also been big for two ancillary guys who have really underperformed or been up and down. Andrew Wiggins, he was MIA. I mean, he literally disappeared at the end of last year. Yeah. Beginning of this year, he was nowhere to be found on the court. He was playing, but he was nowhere near the guy that we saw when the Warriors won the title a couple of years ago, and he was the second best player on the team. Since Draymond's come back, maybe a little bit of that Draymond fire has gone Andrew Wiggins' way, and Wiggins has been playing better. And then you have Jonathan Kuminga, who at 21 years old, he's continuously progressed, right? Young players, progress isn't linear. You can see him getting better and better. But since Draymond's been back in the fold, he's made a jump. And Draymond's playing a lot of center, so perhaps an advantage for the Grizzlies tonight.
Let's talk about Draymond Green in that center position, because our center position roster is very thin as well. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been playing out of position, playing that 5 since all the injuries. And then you have Xavier Tillman Sr., and then we kind of go small as well. Draymond, whether he wants to admit it or not, I know gets up a little bit to play in Memphis.
No question.
There is some history there. So on a little bit on the defensive end, for Draymond, Jaren Jackson Jr. would be the 5 matchup if they're going like 5 versus 5. He's been averaging 22 points per game. He has a huge spotlight on him on the offensive end, and he has been performing really well. What do you think that matchup looks like tonight?
It's going to be fascinating on the basis of Draymond Green is not only getting up because he's playing the Memphis Grizzlies. I think that's a great point, but also he's going up against another, and I'll use his term, Spartan dog in Jaren Jackson Jr. He loves playing guys who went to Michigan State and X. That's right. So he's got the Izzo connection going on in this one. And yes, it might be all, love and dove after the game and trading jerseys and all that. But, we all know Draymond Green by now. It's nothing like that during the game. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is a fascinating player to watch from a third-party perspective, because obviously he's the reigning defensive player of the year. I'm not seeing that level of output on the defensive side from him this year. And perhaps that's basically because he has to put up so much on the offensive end. You can only give so much. If he wants to hang out on the perimeter, I do think that plays into the Warriors' hands. They can't stop anybody at the rim. And he does have the frame, and I think the skill set to really put up some big buckets in the paint and control the game in the paint. And that's something with where the Grizzlies are at injury-wise, I think they're going to have to do. The Warriors have no problem with possessions being limited. They don't force enough turnovers. They foul a lot. This is a game where Jackson not only has to be an offensive fulcrum, but I think he needs to be an offensive fulcrum in the paint, and not just with offensive rebounds. I'm saying putting his butt in somebody, getting on the block, and saying, give me the ball. I think that would go a long way for the Grizzlies, but it'll be hard to do Draymond Green might only be 6'6", but you got Jonathan Kuminga who can touch the top of the backboard coming from the blind side. Andrew Wiggins can block some shots. If you want to play a perimeter game, the athleticism might actually be on the Warriors side in this contest, which is wild to say because they are a shell of themselves from where they were only a couple of years ago athletically. But Kuminga and Wiggins coming through has kind of taken that a notch up.
For sure. I'm glad you brought up points in the paint actually, because it's been something that the Grizzlies have been so good at the last 2 years. But I looked
That's
at
right.
the last time that the Grizzlies played the Warriors. The Warriors had 62 points in the paint. The Grizzlies had 20.
Yeah.
Has
Yeah.
that been kind of the story of the Grizzlies, or was that an outlier of just like that one game in Memphis?
Can it be an outlier on both causes? Like the Warriors don't do that, and the Grizzlies shouldn't do that,
Okay.
and maybe that's where my anchoring on JJJ not being at the same defensive level this year is coming, because I watched that game and it's like, well, defensive player of the year, 62 points in the paint, like that doesn't seem great, but he does have the ability. It's not as if he can't get it done. Kuminga is going to be the guy who has to get those points in the paint for the Warriors. Steph is driving to the basket like crazy. He had to when Draymond wasn't out there, when they didn't have sort of the ancillary pieces. There was no clear number two offensively. With Kuminga and Wiggins sort of taking on that role in a Frankenstein way, and with Klay Thompson being back in the fold and playing better as of late, he doesn't have to go to the hoop as hard as often. He can play more of a wing role. So if you're thinking about points in the paint, I think it's going to have to come from Kuminga, and he's more than capable of putting the ball on the floor on the perimeter, getting to the basket, and dunking it over anybody in the NBA. The question is, will he do it a lot? And then, it can come from Wiggins. I'm not ready to say that it will come from Wiggins just because it has been such a new thing to see him playing at a even mediocre to above average level this season. It's probably going to be the team who can get more done near the basket. What a wild concept. That's going to win this basketball game, because it's two flawed teams right now. The Grizzlies because of injury, and the Warriors because, well, they're kind of old.
All right. Well, you said it. The other thing that I just want to point out, I have a different question, but just when you're saying who can do it closer to the basket, it was the Grizzlies got beat so badly in the paint the last time the Warriors were here, but outshot them by a ton from the 3-point line,
Yeah.
which again is kind of an outlier for the Grizzlies. They take a
Yeah.
ton of threes, top 5 in the NBA in attempts, bottom in percentage. They made 23s that game, and they kept the Warriors to just 10 of 31. So that was just something to
Yeah.
look for. But my last question to you is going to be about players for the Warriors. Let's take Steph out of it. He had 26 points last time he was here. He's coming off a game where he scored 37. Everyone knows who Steph is. Everyone knows
Right.
what Steph can do. Steph's going to get his. Who's more important to the success of the Warriors tonight in this matchup?
Mm.
Kuminga, who had 20 last game, 26
Yeah.
against the Sixers,
Mm-hmm.
or Andrew Wiggins, who had 16 against the Grizzlies last time, is coming off a 23-point game against the Sixers?
It's a good question. I've mentioned both of them sort of ad nauseum to this juncture. Again, I can't say that it's Wiggins on the basis of Wiggins is sort of new. It's a weird, almost paradoxical statement, but him playing at an above average level is a new thing. So I don't trust it yet. Whereas Kuminga, he's been over 20 points for the last 7 games, and beyond that, he has been a defensive marvel. Might not be a paint protector in a high level or anything like that, though he can get his blocks, but he'll pick you up full court, and he'll be a pest
He's
on the
very much like
perimeter.
our Vince Williams Jr. I feel like they are a
That's
very
right.
good comp.
Yeah, and with athleticism to burn, and he's figuring out now that he doesn't have to play that smart. I know that sounds silly, but he can just go and feel it out. He can just go out there and do what his body tells him to do. The Warriors play, by definition, a very cerebral brand of basketball. That's the Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Draymond Green way. But they are giving Jonathan Kuminga more and more leeway to just go out there and be the best athlete on the court. So if he can go out there and do that and score another 20 points, it's going to go a really long way, because that's all Steph Curry has really needed this season. The Warriors aren't going to win a title. They're not that kind of team. But Steph Curry has been out there, and far too many nights this season, he's been scoring 35, and no one else is even in the 20s. And without that number two, it's really, really hard to just win games in the NBA, much less win a lot of them. Kuminga stepping forward, scoring 20 points in the last 7 games. It's absolutely tantamount to the Warriors winning this contest. And I think the Warriors have figured that out, and they're giving him more leeway to go out there and do just that.
All right. So whoever's got Kaminga tonight is going to be the that's going to be the matchup to watch.
It's going to be
Dieter,
wild.